So Chris has appointed me as pretty much the head prop maker for this series. So not only have I made mostly all the props for this fan film, but I've also done all the costumes as well. And I'm going to tell you how I've done that. In terms of how I made the costumes, if you're familiar with cosplay or cosplaying at any sort, you may recognize this stuff. This is EVA foam, used for a lot of things, mats specifically, yoga mats, that sort of thing. It's easy to cut, but it's also pretty sturdy, so a lot of cosplayers use this sort of thing because it's soft, it's not too hard, but it is sturdy and pretty rigid. So I come up with a design for how the character should look. With Omega and the Sontaran helmet, it was pretty simple. Just get stills from the show and just just draw how it should look. Add a bit of a New Who spin to it and see what I can resource in order to make it unique. Then I take the design, draw out on a piece of foam board, and I cut it out. Before painting, I spray a substance called plastic dip in order to basically act as a primer in order for the paint to stick to the foam, and I use spray paint to paint it. So this is Omega's mask, which we saw at the end of series 5, but it makes its full-on appearance and gets many use in the Heart of Time. So this whole front faceplate is made of EVA foam, with the under texture side facing upwards. The whole point was to give it an organic texture. I cut it to shape, cut the eye holes. All these lines, all the details, all the lines around the eye holes, and basically all the details here are made of craft foam. The mouth itself is also made of craft foam as well. I covered the mask in a thin layer of plaster in order to give it a bit more of a stony, rocky sort of texture. And some aspects it works, but you can also see it's cracking a bit, like you see over here around the mouth flap here, and also around the lip. Covered in a thin layer of plaster and painted it, but over time this has chipped away. Like, it's made it rigid, but I wouldn't recommend using it because it cracks quite easily, as you can see here. So the fins are also craft foam as well. This bit here, which is also on the mask, the original mask, is made of craft foam as well, with a wire inside it to give it a bit more sturdy structure. The back's made of foam as well, but there's also a salad bowl on the top to basically make the dome of the helmet. And you can see all the fins of the back of the helmet, like on the original helmet, because the whole point was to basically do my own version of the original helmet, but with a New Who sort of design. So here's the chest plate. It's all made of foam as well. Drew out the shape on the massive sheet of EVA foam. Cut out, however, it was too big, so I modified the back and just used another bit of foam, glued it onto the back to make it hang less around my neck, so it hangs higher over my chest. So there's a technique with EVA foam where basically if you cut some lines on it and use it with a heat gun, it'll basically make the foam expand, also to make the lines more pronounced. I tried doing this and you can see some of it works, but however this mark here, I got a bit too close to the gun and now I just got this massive like scorch mark here. And watching for the film back here is quite noticeable. You know, you can see it. Here are the gauntlets I made for Omega. Basically replicating the design of the original gauntlets he wore in the Three Doctors. And I made 2 here. Again, I took some EVA foam with the textured side up, and I used a heat gun to warp the foam until it was now at an angle. And the straps here, the bands, are also EVA foam as well, and I got it in place in order to make it keep its shape. As for the rest of the costume, the gold bodysuit, the black gloves, and the purple cape, that came from an Ozymandias cosplay. Parts of it have been used for the Time Lord President, but this is what I used for the rest of Omega's costume. After that, we filmed in front of a green screen and had our good friend Frederick Montgomery do the voiceover.
Face it, Doctor, you have lost.
Maybe. Then again, you like to think you're better than me, right?
I am Omega, one of the founding fathers of Gallifrey. You are nothing. The Timeless Child is nothing but a fantasy. The secret to regeneration was pioneered by me.
Alpha, as a character, is something that me and Chris have been going back and forth on for ages. Like, Chris had an idea for the character. He basically wanted Omega to have a henchman. He wanted Omega to have a henchman so he would have someone to fight during the final battle scene. And he also had in mind how he wanted the character to be portrayed. He kept pitching me Omega as the Doctor Who version of Thanos. Alpha was meant to be his version of Ebony Maw. But the design we were struggling with for absolutely ages. His backstory kept changing all the time. Because we didn't know how he was going to look, quite a bit of his backstory got changed to an alien that was drafted by Omega to something that was created by him. That's how things end up turning out. A lot of mentions of where Alpha came from in the script just end up getting cut entirely. Originally, we were going to make him be an alien using the Admiral Akbar head, because I had one. I found one of the car boots. There was a latex mask. So not only was he going to be an alien, but it was also going to be a callback to our original fan film, The Darkness, which was our 50th anniversary fan film. As there was a scene set in an alien bar where I wore the mask pretending to be one of the patrons. So Chris originally wanted that because he thought it would be a nice callback to that fan film. But as time went on, the mask started to fall apart. There were plastic caps to make the eyes that kept falling out. The paint was peeling. The whole thing was just falling apart from the inside out, to the point that the mask was completely unusable now. Okay, so this mask has been in my costume storage for God knows, who knows how long. But I took it out for the first time in whenever. So we can do a test footage for Alpha's look in the costume. And this is the mask after all this time. The eyes kept popping out. You can see a crack there. Crack in the plastic. And it kept popping out. Like, even when we were doing The Darkness, this eye kept popping out. So I had to hot glue it back in. You can still see some of the glue. And as you can see here, some of the paint in the mouth is really peeling off and right there. But to be honest, this wouldn't be that much of an issue if it wasn't for this. I have no idea what's happening here because I'm not an expert in latex, but this part here is completely dried up. Like, it's dried up to the point that it's even cracked. Like, I don't know how this works. Like, I have no idea how this even happens. Like, saying that though, I don't think this would have worked for the fight scene because the eye holes are in the nostrils here, which is not exactly it doesn't give you the best vision. So it just make the whole thing completely really hard to see, especially since this was supposed to be used for a sword fight. Plus, the whole thing is just like, it's massive. Like, it's really spacious. It's roomy. The whole thing is like, since the whole thing is latex, it's just all limp and there's no structure inside of it. In fact, I don't even remember at the time the mask kept moving. Like, whenever I turn my head, the mask doesn't move because that's how much room that there is inside this mask. Right. So yeah, not only is this completely fallen apart, I don't think it would have worked for the sword fight even if it was in good condition. And so, after struggling for a while, I went through my storage of costumes and I found a mask that we were originally going to use for one of the episodes of Series 3 or Series 4 before a lot of our plans got changed and before we went on a big hiatus for a couple of years. Either way, even though that episode, which I written, it never got filmed, it never got made. We did absolutely nothing with that episode. But the mask was still there. And so, since we never used it for anything, I decided that we could use that for the design of Alpha. So here is the mask I used for Alpha. I don't have footage of making this mask because, like I said, this was for an episode that never got produced. So what I did, I took a plain white theatre mask. They're really cheap, you can buy it for a couple of quid. So I did that and cut off the bottom from the bottom lip, because when I originally wrote the episode this was meant to be a cyborg, so the lower jaw is meant to be exposed. After that, I painted the whole thing bronze. I wanted it to be steampunk and kind of rusted and kind of cracked, so that's why it's painted the way it is. I painted all the details. All the gaps in the plating, all the scuff marks, all the cracks which I drew and painted on. All I did with paint and a Sharpie. See, these bits here, they're actually a bit of chrome silver card. So I just took a bit of card that was chrome silver, cut out the shapes and glued them onto the mask. The rivets are made of milliput, which I painted. So this tube bit here, the washer plate thing, is another bit of card, but the tube itself is made of tinfoil, which I basically took a long strand of tinfoil, rolled it up until it was a sausage shape, and glued it onto the mask. So I made it look like it was running to the back of the head, and all the rivets keeping it down are sculpted with milliput and painted the same colour. Once Chris was happy with the idea of using that mask, I basically made a design of basically a parallel version to Omega. Simple design with a cloak, some gold features. While Omega design is purple and gold, Alpha is black and gold. The whole point was to make them similar to each other, to make them look like they were part of the same group, make them uniform, but ultimately distinct from each other. So during the film, you see Chris wearing this, a Sontaran helmet, when he's playing the Dark Doctor. So this is just a salad bowl with eye holes cut out, as well as the base grinded away as well. There's foam here, strip of EVA foam. In fact, the whole base of it is made of EVA foam. I just took a giant strip of foam. So everything from the collar to the ring around the helmet is all made out of EVA foam, because I wanted to do a design similar to the Invasion of Time sometimes, where there's the giant ring around the helmet. And that's what I did here, so to give it a similar design and to hide the scenes of the salad bowl. It only appears in the film for a bit, but it may be making a few appearances down the line. You have to wait and see.